Alright, so this is going to be part one to what if Asta had copy magic. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
They took it to 10. Let me tell you how I come through with the 1-2, kicking shit like kung fu. Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, little hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the raw fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
Alright, so this is going to be my first Black Clover what if. And in this what if, we're gonna do a little bit of spoilers. You know, there's gonna be some spoilers in this, like not major ones, but you know, there's spoilers nonetheless. There's things like how a 5-leaf grimoire is created, and we're gonna be going into the kind of elf massacre a little bit later into this video, like you know. So if you don't want to hear that and you want to wait until the anime's caught up, which would be like, I don't know, like a few like weeks or maybe a month or two, then you can. But with that being said, let's get into the actual what if. So our what if starts a little bit earlier, a lot earlier actually. It starts 500 years before, you know, the start of Black Clover. So it's the day of the wedding between Licht and the first Wizard King's sister, you know. And there's actually this one elf that was there who had he had a 4-leaf grimoire just like Licht did, but his magic was ink magic, you know, ink, the stuff that you write with. So, you know, everyone was happy for two races to, you know, get married. But this is when the humans actually come and, you know, kill everyone. And the elf that has the ink magic was using himself as like a shield to protect his children. And, you know, as he's doing this, he just sees all the destruction around him, and this actually makes him, you know, go into despair. And this is what turns him into a dark elf, and it turns his 4-leaf grimoire into a 5-leaf grimoire. But because, you know, he's right in front of his children, he like snaps out of it, right? And, you know, because of all the wounds that he got from protecting his children, he actually, you know, ends up dying from this. And his grimoire doesn't disappear because it turned into a 5-leaf grimoire. And this is when a demon, or not a demon, a devil goes into it, because there's a difference, a demon and a devil. If you play D&D, there's a slight difference. So the demon that was that goes into the grimoire, his magic was copy magic. Because if you don't know, from what we've seen, if a demon goes into a grimoire, it actually combines the two magics. Like with Asta's grimoire in the original canon, Licht's original, you know, magic was like sword magic, right? And the magic that the devil had was anti-magic. So they combined both of them and became anti-magic swords. So I think in this one it'd be called copy magic ink, you know. So Asta, he's not born with no magic. He's actually born with a lot of magic, because him and you know are rivals. So they're rivals in all sense of the word. So they would be around equal in almost every stat. So Yuno has a 5, between a 5 and a 4 in every stat, except for you know, I can't even say that because of the name. But the only stat he doesn't have a 4 or a 5 in is actually physical strength. So Asta would be kind of a little bit different. The way that Asta would be different is that Asta would have a 5 out of 5 in physical strength and a 3 out of 5 in magical sensing. And the reason why I say this is because throughout his life, he didn't know what type of magic he had, because his magic is copy magic ink, and there'd be kind of no way to test it, right? Because he's never been in a position where he would like be with someone else's grimoire and he wouldn't be able to copy anything because he doesn't have a grimoire yet. So that's the reason why he doesn't know his own magic. So he would train his body just in case his magic would need it. And I the power system in Black Clover has to do a lot with your like personality. So Asta not having a power, he would want everything, right? He would want to be, this kind of mage or that kind of mage. So it kind of makes sense if he had copy magic. So he would train his like body, but he wouldn't really know how much magical, power he has or mana. So he would have a little bit less than in the magic sensing department. So both of them have equal amount of points in their stats, but they're like distributed a little bit differently, if that makes sense. So we get to the day where they become 15 and they're going to get their grimoire. So Asta and Yuno go to that tower where the ceremony's actually held. So Asta actually gets his grimoire, unlike in canon where he has to wait a bit. So he gets a grimoire that's descending slowly, and it gets a little bit of attention because of how it looks, but most of the attention is diverted to Yuno because of his 4-leaf grimoire that's actually emitting a lot of light. Asta's grimoire is a little bit different than it is in canon. It's still a 5-leaf grimoire, like how I explained in the beginning. But the difference is that it's descending, and as it's descending, it's actually changing multiple colors until it becomes a mixture of like all the colors, and then it has like a little like black aura around it, around the multiple colors mixed in. So people are seeing this and they're like, what the heck? Because they've never seen anything like that. And I would say that the back of the grimoire is actually ripped off, because this is to apply or imply that there's no end to it, because copy magic doesn't really have an end to it, right? But it does have a beginning. So it's kind of like the same way that the Wizard King has like a coverless like grimoire, but since time doesn't really have a start or a beginning, it doesn't have a cover, but this does. So he would look at the grimoire, he's like, oh my gosh, but he's never seen anything like it, because he's always seen things that have covers and a back to it, right? And he would read it, and most of the page would be empty except for one spell, and he would read what type of magic it is, and he would know that it's copy magic ink, and he would see how the spell is used, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So the way that this magic is actually done, there's 2 ways Asta can copy a spell. There's one where he just touches the grimoire, but this is a very inefficient way, because if he touches the grimoire, he needs like 3 seconds of him holding it and he gets 1 spell. Alright? But he would need to know how this spell like kind of functions. All he needs to know is like what type of spell it is, like if it's an attack spell, a transportation spell, a defense spell, or a binding spell. That's all he needs to know, and he would need to know the affinity for it. So if it's like fire, water, ice, things like that, right? So the other way is that he uses his grimoire spell, and I would call this Note Taker. That's his first spell, and basically Asta would open up the grimoire, and all the spells that he's looking at will be transferred into his grimoire, right? He would also have instead of 1 spell, he actually would have 2, but this one has to do more with the ink. He would have 3. Let me scratch that. He would have Note Taker, and then he would have a spell that would make an ink version of the spell he copied. So like, let's say he had like a spell that like made like a water lance, right? Then he would be able to make an ink lance, but he would only be able to do this with spells that are like liquid or gas. So he would have that. So And then the third one would be, I would call it editor, which is basically he's able to kind of fling a piece or a glob of ink, and if it touches a grimoire, he's actually able to edit it by making the spell stronger temporarily. So like he would give it like an adjective, like I don't know, like let's say Yami was doing a dark dimension slash, he could give it like some sort of like adjective to it, so it could be like vicious dark dimension slash, and it'd become even stronger, but it's only temporarily, right? So eventually it would turn back to normal. So Asta's really excited that he gets this grimoire, because all of his life he's been waiting to get this grimoire so he could be, start his journey to become the Wizard King. And the nature of his like power, he would ask Yuno, like, can I copy your magic? And Yuno being Yuno, he would say like, not a chance, and he would just kind of walk out like he normally does. And Asta wouldn't, he'd be like, oh, okay. And he would go, I think he would learn some abilities from Sister Lily. I think she would let him use her grimoire because she's like a nice person, and she has no reason not to, right? So we get to the part where Asta's just in the woods. Instead of complaining about or contemplating the fact that he didn't get a grimoire, he's actually just testing out different abilities, since he's copied basically almost all of Sister Lily's spells, which isn't that many, since she's not like a combat mage. She's just someone who just uses her magic for day-to-day tasks, but only has really one spell that's actually meant for combat, which is that fist that she has made out of water. So Asta would be testing out different ways, or different all the different spells she has, right? And we get to the part where Yuno's actually confronted by the two nobles. The first noble would try to use its fire to kind of burn Yuno, but he would just use his wind magic to deflect it. And the two nobles would get pretty scared, considering the fact that Yuno was able to deflect their magic without even using his grimoire. And before the other noble could attack, this is when the chain wizard comes through. This is the guy from near the beginning of the series, where he actually was part of the Purple Orcas, but actually was kicked out because of how ruthless he was, I believe. I forgot his name, but he uses chain magic. So he would do that sneak attack that he does in the anime, where he actually takes Yuno and the two nobles. I think he knocks out the two nobles, but he actually chains up Yuno. So he would take his grimoire and he would talk about how he would sell it to the highest bidder, even though they can't use it. So what would happen is that Asta would come by and he would see what's happening, and the chain magic wizard would actually try to attack Asta, but I think Asta would be fast enough physically to dodge it, and he would use a combination of Sister Lily's water fist and a version of his version where it's an ink, and because it's a liquid, the chains aren't going to do anything because they could just go around it, and he would just get smacked by the two giant fists, right? So when this is done, Yuno is actually smiling, and this is when Asta remembers when they were younger and how they both wanted to be the Wizard King. And Yuno actually thanks Asta and says, looks like you saved me once again. Maybe one day I'll repay my debt. And Asta's smiling because of this. And after this point, they're actually training to go to the the Magic Knights entry exam. So I think Asta he would actually look at the guy's grimoire to actually copy down all his spells, right? So we don't really know all of his spells because he's not really that prevalent in the series. We only seen like 2, and that's like the chain attack, like this chain where like he kind of like slices people, and then the other one was he just binds people. Or I guess there's also that hidden one, but we don't really know how many spells this guy has. But you know, Asta would be trying to, like, you know, how he would train would be a combination of strength training and what's it called, like just using his magic in general. But you know, there is that part where he meets that guy with red hair. I won't go into it yet. I'll go into it later on, just how it was in the anime, but you know, as a flashback. But let's just say Asta did learn how to use a sword, even though he can't really create one. Or I guess he could, since he would be able to copy I forgot his name. I know he has red hair and he used to work for like the Diamond Kingdom, so he'd be able to copy his magic and, you know, and make swords out of that. And there's also a difference between Asta's copy magic and Raya's copy magic, since Asta's magic, his copy magic is harder to like copy from others. I think he'd be able to use 2 different you know, attributes at the same time other than his ink magic. So he could use fire and then water and then his ink magic, if that makes sense, right? So, you know, would still do his normal training where he would use his wind magic to break, you know, he would chop logs and, you know, break rocks. And he would finally get to the day where both of them are heading out to the capital. I think that it would be kind of the same. Like, it wouldn't be much of a difference other than he has different types of magic. Like, they'd still be able to hunt, since Asta still has like chain magic, since he got it from the one guy, and he has that water magic from Sister Lily. So they'd be able to survive pretty well. So when they finally get to the capital, you know, they walk through the walls, or they walk into the walls of the city, right? And they're just walking through town, and they're just seeing all the different magic, and they're like super amazed because they've never seen anything like this. And, you know, they check out, you know, the stores, and they just see the ridiculous prices, at least compared to them, since they've always lived in poverty, you know. And they look up to the mountains, or not the mountains, but higher up, and they see where the castle is, and they ask themselves, you know, is that where the Wizard King lives? And then Yuno actually says probably the country's king too. And Asta says, you know, I better be acquainted with it because soon it's gonna be my home, and if you're lucky, I might let you live in there. And then Yuno would actually retort by saying, if you're lucky, or he would say, you mean my house, and if you're lucky, I might let you live there. So they continue walking, and Asta gets a black snake, like that little like grilled black snake that he got in the anime. So what happens is that they continue and they walk and they get in line to get their number, you know. And it happens the same way as it does in the anime, where everyone's impressed that Yuno has a 4-leaf grimoire. But when they, you know, Asta goes up, you know, the same interaction kind of happens, even though he still has a 5-leaf grimoire, so it still looks beaten up and the back is kind of ripped. So the guy questions if it's like an actual grimoire, and he says, yeah, look, just look. So eventually the guy just doesn't care and just gives him the number and says, you know, to go, right? So when they get into that like kind of front area where everyone's at, you know, the magic birds don't go near Yuno, but I think one anti-magic bird would actually go towards Asta, and this would be Nero. You know, if you ever read the manga, you know, because I said there's spoilers, so you shouldn't be surprised if this is going to be a spoiler too. So it turns out Nero is actually a woman. She was the assistant to the first Wizard King, and she was protecting the Five-Leaf Grimoire for a few hundred years. So I think she did the same thing for this grimoire that Asta has. So she would go like on top of Asta's head, even though technically the other anti-birds shouldn't go near him since he has the same amount of magic as Yuno. So because of this, I think Nero would actually poke the head, Asta's head, and this would cause Asta to kind of run around trying to get it off. This is when he would bump into Yami, right? And Yami would say, "Do you have some sort of death wish?" And Asta would be thinking like, okay, we can't judge a book by its cover, but he's looking at, Yami, and he's pretty scared because this guy doesn't look like a mage at all. He's very tall, very buff, and very intimidating. So Asta was like, okay, let me think of a way to get out of this situation. Let me just compliment him. And he would say, wow, you look really old for your age. You must have had a rough life. And this is when Yami gets even angrier and says, I guess I was right about that death wish. And he starts squeezing his head. And this is when Finral and I forgot the other guy's name. It starts with a G. I remember that. But they basically say, what are you doing? Right? And Yami would say, like, this kid was asking for it. And Asta would try to use his strength to actually pull him off. And Yami would notice this. But before he could do anything, this is when the fireworks start. And that's when the actual test starts. So, all the knight captains would be there. And Sekra, which is, I think, the guy's name, the Aha guy, the joke, the kind of comic relief character, he would, explain to Asta the different, knight captains and what they do. So, for the actual tests, I think Asta would do pretty well. I don't think he'd do as well as Yuno, because I think Asta's a little bit more clumsy, and things like that. But when we get to the part where he actually has to do the kind of the broom, I think he would try to copy Yuno, right? But he kind of have like a little bit less balance, right? So Sekiro would be there to be like, just relax and things like that, right? But Sekiro doesn't really have that high of opinion of Asta, since he was born in a low a commoner's village, right? A peasant's village. I don't know if Sekiro is actually noble or not, but he could be. I don't know if they ever explained in the anime or manga. So Asta would get his balance on the broom, and he would actually do the same thing as where he would just be on, instead of like riding the broom, he'd be on his like 2 feet, almost like a skateboard. The judges would see him kind of struggle, right? So they would notice all the kind of imperfections that Asta would be doing. So we get to the part with Sekira versus Asta, right? I think Sekira would still choose Asta as his like fighting partner, because everything that Asta's trying to do is getting outshined by Yuno. So no one's really paying attention to Asta except for some of the captains like Yami and maybe for Golion. So we get to the part where they actually fight, and Sekira thinks he has it in the bag, since he's going to use his bronze creation magic to make that kind of force field that has like cannons on the side to kind of protect him while doing offense. But before that happened, Sekira was actually telling Asta, why are you trying so hard? You're just from a peasant's village, right? Asta would, get very angry at this, so he'd go all out. So right when the timer starts, he would use his chain magic to kind of anchor down Sekra, and after this he would use his ink magic fist, the water, or the ink version of the water fist that Sister Lily used, and he would combine the water fist and the ink, and they would smack into each other, with Sekra being in the middle. And this was actually, I think this would be enough force to crack the shell and actually get through Sekra. So everyone would be impressed by this, right? So the other fights go the same, right? So we get to the part where they're actually choosing the captains are choosing people to be on their squad. So I'll tell you why some people don't get chosen, or why certain captains don't choose Asta. So William does not choose Asta because everyone in the Golden Dawn are reincarnation of elves, and Asta is not, so he would not be chosen. Novel Silva, the Silver Eagles will not choose him because he is a commoner, and I don't think Nozel would choose him because of that fact, and he didn't really see that much potential in Asta. And let's just go to the people that would actually choose him. I think it'd be Frogolion, the Purple Orcas, and then Yami with the Black Bulls. So the reason, so Frogolion would ask Asta, like, what type of magic do you have? And Asta would be like, my magic is copy magic ink. So Frogolion would think about this, and after a bit of thinking, he would decline. He would put down his arm, saying that your magic is too situational, not knowing how it actually works. And hearing this, I think the Purple Orca would also put down his hand, and Yami would be the only one left, so Asta would have no choice. And the reason why I'm doing this is because, without the Black Bulls, you don't really have a story. So we get into later on, and this is when Asta actually goes to the bathroom because he's having diarrhea because of the snake he ate. So what happens is that he runs towards the bathroom, and this is when Sekra actually comes and makes that poisonous lizard with his magic, and it's about to go into Asta's stall. And then this is when actually comes through and stops it using his wind bird, or that bird made out of wind magic, to actually break the lizard. And Sekra would try to get out of it, but then by saying it was like a bet to see who was stronger, and would threaten Sekra by saying, you're not on his level, so just leave. So Sekra would just leave without, kind of scared, right? And we would get to the part where Asta and Yami would be angry at Asta for taking so long, and Finral would open the portal so they could get to the Black Bull's base, and they wouldn't just fly there because it would just take too much time. So Asta, seeing Finral with his magic, he'd be like, wow, that's amazing, can I see your grimoire later? And Finral would be like, I don't know, you might let me lose a job or something, right? I might lose a job because of that. So he's kind of hesitant, but only in a joking manner. So I'll end it here. Alright, so we're almost at 500 subscribers. That's pretty crazy, so I'm gonna do a Q&A for that. But like, comment, subscribe. And this is my first Black Clover what if, so if you guys want more, you just comment down below. I want to do more anime stuff, and I want to do more general stuff, more other than what ifs. I want to do things like reviews and kind of stuff like that. So if you guys are interested in that, for the people who actually watch all the way to the end, would you guys be interested in hearing my opinions on different topics, different anime, different music, different video game shows, movies, things like that, right? So with that being said, yeah, this is the end of the video. So yeah,